Greetings. It's Sunday morning. I'm Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I wrote for Pathos for nearly 10 years, a column called No Longer Quivering. I am now doing my own thing, publishing in various places, working on several books. And I'm something of a history geek. So don't take this as an attack on Ron of Faces of the Forgotten. I usually love his channel, he has a lot of good content. I am just sick to death of creators that will trample over local laws in various places in order to create content. I mean, that really sucks. There are a lot of really great historians connected to New Orleans that could have made this whole thing a whole lot better. And Ron, I'm not attacking you so much as I'm asking you to make changes in how you do your videos. Just make sure you have permission for what you're doing and make sure your history is solid, especially in a place like New Orleans where there's history all around. It's not an attack, like I said. This is just, hey, dude, you need to do better. Grab my tissue. You may know me, know about me. I'm from the greater New Orleans area. My whole entire family is from there. I have people that are buried in these places he's talking about: St. Louis 2, St. Louis 1, St. Roque, all these different places. I have a large Cajun family, and the other side of the family is Creole. So I'm talking today because I'm actually I'm a little hurt and I'm a little upset because, like I said, I did like his content, and then I got to the New Orleans stuff where he missed opportunities galore, and he misrepresented quite a few things. So I want to talk about that today. Okay, here's the thing. First, I have to explain the culture in New Orleans. If you know anything about me and you know how I do culture, especially now I'm living in Costa Rica and I see every gringo and their brother knocking heads with the culture, you can't change culture where you're going. You also cannot impose upon it the same standards of your own culture. And I know Ron is from somewhere in the Midwest, Illinois maybe, and I got to watch him impose some of that culture on New Orleans. Well, here's the thing about New Orleans. New Orleans has its own unique, distinct culture, and it doesn't need to be changed or put up against the standards. Hey, Cheryl, the standards of the United States, I'm going to say. I grew up there. The culture is very unique in Louisiana. It's very different than it is anywhere in the US. It's almost like being in another country. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the culture in places in South Texas and places like that, where you're bumping up against another country altogether. So you're picking up some of their cultural things and you're doing it that way. Louisiana was run by the Spanish, by the French. The Americans came in. And so you have this mixture of cultures, and then you can add in the slavery aspect and the West African religions and culture that came in. A lot of and the Native Americans as well. A lot of the distinctive dishes of New Orleans that you will eat are a melange of French culture, Indian culture, Native American culture, West African culture. And that is how you get these crazy dishes they have down there that I absolutely love. I could eat my weight in crawfish etouffee, and I am not a thin person, so that would be a considerable amount. So there's that thing. It's culture, culture. Now, I had to laugh because Ron's first video, of which my screen cap is from his video, he went to all the touristy places, and that's fine. You can go to New Orleans and go to all the touristy places. In fact, I'd recommend before anybody who's never been to New Orleans, go and watch the Walter's World video on the don'ts of New Orleans, because he makes very good points about culture and how to handle yourself there. Okay, now I have to talk about St. Louis 1 and St. Louis 2 and some of the other Catholic cemeteries. The Archdiocese of New Orleans still runs those cemeteries. They're still in the purview and ownership of the Catholic Church. And there are those of us have family members there. This is a very special place for us. In years past, there's been so much destruction and vandalism, robbery, and even killing. St. Louis 1 and Louis 2, the diocese made the decision to close the cemeteries to everybody but tour groups en masse, or if you're a family member and you have family there, you're going to clean the casket and lay flowers. You contact the archdiocese and you get permission and you go right on in. Okay, but there's one thing that you cannot do in any New Orleans cemetery that is Catholic owned. Do you know what that is? You cannot film. You can take still photographs all you want all day, but you can't walk in the St. Roch with a camera. You can't go over the walls of St. Louis 1 with with one of those stupid drones. You just can't. You're not supposed to film. And these places really aren't something that is meant for tourism. It's meant for those of us that have family there. One of the big problems, especially in the 90s, that happened was they would go in St. Louis 1 or 2 people and they would cut off the monuments. They would just cut them off and bring them out and sell them in the antique stores, huge marble angels and the like. I remember going to St. Louis 1 with my father one time because my father always did the New Orleans thing, which is November the 1st is All Saints Day. And in our culture, you go and you clean your family graveyard then. You clean all the stones, you put flowers out. That's just what you do. We used to always bring a picnic basket and we would have a picnic afterwards. It was just a very, very respectful, it was just respectful. It's a very precious time, and I treasure those memories of my father. But I remember one of the last times I did it. Hey, Lisa, one of the last times I did it, my father was heartbroken. We came to one of our family vaults, and the statuary had been cut off. It was missing. So in Ron's video on St. Louis 1, he never even addresses that. He doesn't even talk about the reasons that the caskets are the whole cemetery is closed to the public unless you go in a group. He didn't talk about any of that. He just acts like it's some kind of personal inconvenience to him. There are good reasons why these places are closed and you're not allowed to film. Yeah, it's sad to see the damage, Lisa, and you can see on his drone video that a lot of the family tombs have places where clearly there was statuary that had been cut off. And at one point, there were so many tourists flooding into the place that guys from the Desire Street projects would hang out there and rob them. So it was not safe. There were so many things going on. That is why St. Louis 1 and 2 are closed to the general public. As well they should be because of everything that was going on. Let me state again, I like Ron. I like his videos. I just don't like how he goes about it in New Orleans. So, and he also gives a little bit of misinformation. He's talking about Marie Laveau. Now, I know that most of you know who Marie Laveau is. She was someone who was a voodoo priestess. She was a healer. She was a freed woman of color in New Orleans. It was quite famous. St. Louis 1 holds her tomb, and before they closed it off, people were coming with chalk and making X's all over it and grabbing a handful of dirt from around where her tomb was to do different things with rituals. And Ron said that she was just this awesome healer and this nice lady. There's a lot of truth to that. She was, but at the same time, she was known to go down to Congo Square and dance to the rhythm of the West African drums many times. She was considered a voodoo priestess as well as a healer and someone that dispensed herbal medicine. So to say that that is not true is to disrespect the entire mixed history of New Orleans. If I was grieving over a grace and a drone buzzed me, I'd freak out and throw rocks at it. I would. I would probably do worse than that. I would probably attack the drone and smash it because that is extremely disrespectful. Extremely. Oh, your grandmother and other women of the family did that, Cheryl? Was my father. He was the one that did it in my family. I don't know why, but he always respected that. Whenever I go back to Baton Rouge where he is buried, one of the big things I do is I put a bouquet on his grave because I remember him. I don't, and I managed to clean his gravestone. I'm not one of the ones that goes and does every single family grave because that would take me all day, and I'd have to travel to Ponchatoula. I'd have to travel to that. I'd have to travel to Bayou Manchac. I have relatives all over. On my father's side of the family, there are a lot from New Orleans. My mother's side of the family, it was Ponchatoula, it was Bayou Manchac, it was those areas of the that were just sort of past New Orleans in Bayou country, in one of the Bayou countries, just not the southwestern one. So my families are concentrated in southeast Louisiana. I'd read she was a genius with herbal medicine. She actually was. My understanding is she was incredibly talented as an herbalist and for making these posets and potions. And then she saved the lives of many people. It's also been speculated she did this using voodoo. I don't know if that's true or not, but I wish she had written all of this down. I would have loved to have seen. I would have loved to have seen her book. One of my treasures that disappeared when I moved here was a book that my great great grandmother had written. It was in French because on my mother's side of the family, I remember my great grandmother quite well because she didn't speak English. She only spoke French. And so as a child, I still spoke Cajun French. Now I couldn't do it to save my life, but then I did. Her, it was her mother's or grandmother's book. It wrote down all these herbal recipes for how to heal people. And it was pretty crazy, some of the things they told you to do. I actually used one of the recipes in there for a plaster when my husband had kidney surgery and he had this really long incision and it healed up, but shortly after it healed up, it started separating where there was like fluid coming out of it. So I used one of those recipes. I plastered him up and it worked. It stopped the separation and it made the healing happen a lot quicker. So there's something to be said. Can't spell or type. Yeah, I can't either, Lisa, which is why I'm talking. So the Archdiocese doesn't allow anybody in there to do those things for filming. And Ron flew a drone over the wall and filmed. And then he went into St. Roque and filmed. It's forbidden at St. Roque. In fact, I believe it may have been on the sign. One of the reasons that the Archdiocese came up with the no filming whatsoever in any of the Catholic cemeteries is that because of Easy Rider. Easy Rider, they had a sequence. I'm sure you've seen it if you've seen the movie where there are people who are having an acid trip and having sex in the graveyard. It's pretty crazy. Very, very crazy and so disrespectful to do that. And they did not have permission to film either. Oh, Cheryl, I bet she was. I bet she was. I think it's sad that we've lost a whole generation, several generations of people that had this knowledge, and we no longer have it. My book disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. It's kind of sad because I did have a number of things like that disappear. I had a book written by my great grandfather, who was a Methodist circuit rider in South Louisiana, that disappeared. I had his notes from 1905 when he was ministering. All sorts of stuff like that just disappeared when I moved. So back to the thing with Ron. When he said that about Marie Laveau, I just about fell off my chair. I'm going to forgive him for saying New Orleans wrong. He kept saying New Orleans. Please don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Now, you don't have to say New Orleans like some of us do from there, but you have to at least say New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, not New Orleans. It tells people you haven't ever been there before. huge gardens around her house. Cheryl, yeah, I can relate to that. I remember my other great grandmother on my father's side, who was from New Orleans and in her later years moved to Ponchatoula to be around her grandchildren and great grandchildren. She had an enormous house, I remember as a child, and being fascinated by her enormous bathtub. She had one of those clawfoot tubs. The house was built sometime around, I guess, the 1900s. It's huge. I remember her letting me play in the huge bathtub. Now, she spoke English, and she was quite the great lady type, quite stern and the like. When I was a kid, the old man who lived across the road counted my warts off. I wasn't allowed to look, so I don't know what he did. No relation. We called him Grandfather McDonald. Marmaduke, that is an awesome story, and it's a shame, like I said, that we're losing the knowledge of these things because there obviously are ways to deal with some of this stuff that are natural, and I'm all about that because I've had such bad asthma for so long. I am all about herbal remedies when they work and when they're good. The big one that I discovered through my friend Cindy Kunzman, who is an awesome person, go read her blog, um, Under Much Grace. Garlic. Garlic is the best thing in the world when you have a sinus infection. It works. It works wonders. How neat to have that memory. Yeah, obviously that is pretty cool. Now, okay, I'm going to forgive him for some of the things he said. One of the things he said that I just have to debunk was he talked about the oven vaults. Now, the oven vault, there are three, when you go in these old cemeteries, there are actually three types of graves that you commonly find in the cemeteries. We don't bury underground because of the water table, because the whole city is mostly below sea level. You see coping graves, which are, they have like limestone or whatever around them, and there can be anywhere from like 6 inches to 3 feet high. You would put the casket in there. It's all lined so that you don't affect the water table. Those are graves that you see a lot of family members in because with the heat, the caskets and people would deteriorate so quickly it was possible to bury more than two people in a coping grave. He didn't know about that. He kept puzzling over that. You'll see ledger stone graves too, which are not that different than the coping graves. They're also slightly raised as much as 3 feet, and you have a huge slab of stone. You might have 10 or 15 family members in those. Same deal. As the caskets deteriorate and the people deteriorate, you can put more and more in there. I know that sounds super gross. He was talking about the wall vaults, which are also known as oven vaults. Okay. Those are very common in New Orleans. Those are the things you see where there's a wall and there's all kinds of oven shaped holes in the crypt. He said that within a year, the casket and the person break down because it's not too much different because it's so hot. For that to happen, it would have to get to be 1600 degrees, like the lowest point that you can cremate somebody, to have the casket and the person break down that quickly. They do break down, but the process takes longer than a year. And what they do with those when they have a lot of family is they have a 10-foot long pole with a little doodad at the end that looks kind of like a long hoe. And underneath is a pit. They push what's left into the hole that goes into the pit underneath the entire oven vault and add somebody else, put a new casket in there, add a name to the stone, and there you go. Because downtown there's such limited lands that are actually, you can actually put something on. That's why you will see sometimes these oven vaults in the cemeteries in New Orleans. And it's not weird. It's just part of their culture. They say in St. Louis 1, there's as many as 100,000 people buried because of these different systems and ways to bury people. And I don't doubt that one bit. One bit. Is it true they removed it? No, Cheryl, they aren't removed. That's not true. That's one of those things. That's where the 10-foot long pole comes along and you get scraped into the pit beneath through the hole because they had broken down pretty far in a couple of years, but not as he's saying. It's not completely burned up like the person in their casket were cremated. Nothing of the sort. It doesn't get that hot. So that's where the idiom I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole comes into play because of the 10-foot poles of New Orleans that they're using in the oven vaults. That is where that little piece of Lisa, I am a geek. I read about everything. And if I run up on something I don't understand, my husband can tell you I will read endlessly. The other day I was reading about COVID, long COVID, that I know a lot of my friends have had. They think now long COVID may actually be mast cell. And I have mast cell activation disorder. I've had it for probably, well, I've been diagnosed 15 or 16 years when I really got really sick and they couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with me. The doctor I worked for in the clinic, there were 4 doctors there. He said that it was mental, that it was not possible to be that allergic to that many things. Well, guess what? It is if you have mast cell. So when I saw that they're thinking now that mast cell may play a role in long COVID, I was fascinated. I had to go in there and read all the studies and figure out which ones are legit, which ones were total BS, because sometimes these things are. That's one of the things that I go with science. It's like yesterday, my husband sent me an article. He was all verklempt about how the USA is falling apart. Now, while I know it's true, some things are much worse than they were in the States. Um, I don't believe that it's entirely broken down at this point. There may be a chance yet to pull aside and get everything right. I would hope so. That's my home country. I'm a resident here, but that's my home. I want everything to work. So anyway, I looked at the article and I told my husband, I said, number one, who is this writer and who is this website? It behooves you to research all this crap very thoroughly. It turned out the website that he was citing was one that does gloom and doom and has been doing gloom and doom about America for years. So they didn't have any studies. They couldn't cite any real statistics. So you have to do, Cheryl, you have to pick who you're going with. There is a lady, I'm going to have to see if I can find who you're going with. There is a lady, I'm going to have to see if I can find her YouTube channel again, who is a New Orleans tour guide that knows it all. She even knows the French name for the pit I'm talking about, which I don't even know. And I love listening to her talk, her accent, Chapatulas, Nolans. She's talking about all the things that people who come down to Louisiana completely mispronounce. St. Roque, just some of the silly things that we say, like instead of saying metari, we say metri or metari, no A in it. I read about Italian cemeteries where they dug up graves to make room for new graves. The bones are moved to an ossuary. Yes, that happens in Paris, and it happens in parts of Italy too. I don't know if it ever happens anywhere in New Orleans because the heat and everybody decomposing, and then within a year or two, you have somebody die, and you can put them in there with you. I just don't know, but I know that that's really common in Europe, very common. And that's one thing I did not get to tour when I went to Paris. The times I've been to Paris, I didn't get to tour the ossuary tour. It's underneath. It's like the caverns under Paris, and there's all these bones. And I'd like to see that. That would be something to see, even though I don't really like that. But when you have, like I said, most historians on YouTube do a good job, most of them. And I have some people I definitely watch because they do a better job than others. This lady was giving virtual cemetery tours of New Orleans during the pandemic when everything was closed down. And Hermie's mom, they were giving virtual tours because she couldn't get out. When I went to New Orleans in March, it was still not open for everything. The hotel I stayed at, which was one I stayed at many times, well, before, it had been really great, was not up to snuff. And it was, they had just reopened it and they were still dealing with a lot of supply chain things. People are telling me right now there's huge supply chain issues in the States right now. Hey, Mandy. And I don't know if that's true or not. We have had supply chain issues here with anything coming from America. And I'm just now starting to see some things that are coming through and wondering what's going on. So that's my rant. That is my rant about when YouTubers skim the surface. The other thing is with this guy is he did a tour of the Metairie Cemetery. That was fascinating. I mean, I knew some things about the Metairie Cemetery. I don't have any family members buried there, so I would not go there. And he did a pretty good job. He did miss a few things. He missed some of the victims of the Isle Denier tragedy that were buried there in Metairie. He missed that. He also didn't seem to note that the reason there were years where he had a lot of graves was yellow fever. We've had yellow fever sweep through New Orleans a number of times and kill off huge portions of the population. There are hurricanes that kill people, all sorts of things. So you gotta be really determined to be there to be a New Orleanian. There are supply chain issues here. I'm sorry to hear that. One of my friends in Wisconsin called me yesterday, and she was telling me about the supply chain thing because we had that here for a while with cat food of all things. We could not get the Whiskas packets, and my cat loves those things. That's all I feed him. That's the only thing he eats. Not pork. Pork will eat anything, literally. Yes, I was eating Ritz crackers for the first time in probably a year, 2 years. And Pork decided she had to eat one of those. So Pork will eat anything. Anything she sees you putting in your mouth goes into Pork's tummy if you can get to it. Oh, Hermes Bomb. I think I know who you are. So the supply chain thing has been a real problem here too. And that's why my first and second run to the States this year, all I did was grab crap and pack suitcases galore because so many things I couldn't get that were used to be you could get here. Mixed with the things that you can never ever get. Son's favorite food due to the strikes in supply chain. It hit some medications, and two of mine were caught in it. Cheryl, I think that it hit here too because some of my medicines I've had a awful time getting, even now. The one I have the worst trouble getting is carbamine. It's a blood pressure pill. I have the hardest time getting that. And I've actually had to switch medicines like 4 or 5 times because I couldn't get the one I was prescribed. So they said, look, try this. And so, um, yeah, he is selective, Mandy. You know, I I used to I never had a child that was selective. Most of my kids would eat pretty much anything I put in front of them. I got to say that I'm blessed in that regards, and I'm blessed that my two youngest seem like really upstanding citizen types. So there's that. My eldest has had some problems in her life due to a bad marriage, and that happens too. My son and I are both autistic. Oh, Mandy, so that means he's got to have what he's got to have, what he'll eat. Okay, that makes perfect sense. We have been warned there'll be delays over Christmas. The older daughter, her birthday present, and didn't arrive for a couple of weeks. I wonder if people are already ordering early for Christmas. Marmaduke, I wouldn't doubt that at all. I'm gonna have to order a Christmas present soon too because I'm not going back to the States for Christmas. I may be going to Mexico for Christmas or Bluefields, Nicaragua, or somewhere else. I have to leave the country unless I finish my documents from a residency here in time. And I'm thinking I'm not going back to the States for Christmas this year. What a cool name for a pet. You are absolutely right. So the supply chain issues live hit here hard too because we get so much stuff. Speaking of which, I'm getting ready to have to make a run to Maxipoli, which is a Walmart subsidiary here. And you can get all kinds of great value things there. I always get the great value rising crust pizzas for us so that we get burned out of eating homemade food. I'll have those days where I'll just say, hey, we're having pizza and a salad. So there's that. There is that. I'm thinking I'm going to list all the historians that I watch and I listen to that seem to be pretty good because there are so many that are really good and they're respectful. And when you're covering something with this much emotion, you have to be respectful. You have to be respectful of the people whose families are buried there and everything else. Now, I did see that Ron is veering off into true crime, and I would say caution on that. There are family members that, when you are talking about the murders, that will be impacted by what you've said. I mean, I learned that the hard way with the Carol Ann Cole case and looking at some of the true crime bloggers. Some of them on YouTube are not very accurate, the true crimers. They come up with their own decisions. Oh, Cheryl, what is it like in where you're at with the travel restrictions and the COVID numbers? COVID numbers are crazy high here, but they're not doing anything on the restrictions. In fact, they lifted most of the vehicle restrictions and we're almost under none. I love cemeteries. The monuments are so beautiful. I do too. I always go and look. That's why I started looking at Ron's channel, because when I go places that I've never been before, one of the things that I do like to do is I like to peruse the local cemeteries. Now, I haven't been to the one here yet, and it's just up the road from us. But the main reason that I haven't done that is I just have so many things that I'm doing and so many things going on that I just haven't had time. Uh, Stouffer's, Jazzy LA. Who dat? Yeah. Stouffer's is pretty good. I can get Stouffer's here if I go to Costco Price Mart, our Costco, which is Price Mart. I can, and I have a pile of Stouffer's lasagna in the freezer. I love lasagna, but I get burned out on eating it when it's just the two of us. It's hard to make lasagna for just two people. It just is. I don't know why that would be. You have to work on that. So I might make etouffee tonight. I need etouffee to. I misread your comment. My glasses suck. I love etouffee, and that's another good option for dinner. If I had shrimp, I would make some because you can't really get crawfish here. Our numbers are going down, but we have vaccination passports that must be presented to enter places like restaurants. Ooh. Now, I've said this before about the vaccination passports. We've always had them. We've always had them in the States, whether you know it or not. My girlfriend and I were talking about that yesterday because we both know each other from Germany. We know each other from Fulda, West Germany, where I was working for the USO and her husband was a soldier. My husband was a soldier. We've known each other like 30, 35 years or something. And we were talking about that. We were laughing because the military makes you get vaccinated for everything under the sun, even if you're a spouse. I told her about the time I walked in the clinic with my kids and my son was getting a MMR booster, I think. And they asked me and said, what is your vaccination status? I've been fully vaccinated. I don't think I need. And before I could get the phrase out of my mouth, I was being revaccinated for rubella. I just had to laugh about that one. So the military is always required those things. And Cheryl, I wish the U.S. would drop their requirement for the COVID test because they're still making us COVID test, even if we've been vaccinated. And it's quite costly. It's not free at all here. I love homemade lasagna. It's the best. It's the best, but Stouffer's is a really close second. So there's that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go. Like I said, this was just, I've just been holding on to this forever. And I know I'm probably going to get some of Ron's fans in here. They're going to say, oh, you're attacking Ron. It's the worst thing in the world. It's like, no, I'm not attacking Ron. I want Ron to do better. I want Ron to learn from what he's done and think about it and think about the people whose families were buried in St. Louis 1 who are less than thrilled that he violated the do not film laws of the Archdiocese in New Orleans. You just don't do that. You just don't. It's not respectful. Until a few weeks ago, U.S. travelers had to quarantine. Oh, they're telling me quarantine here unless you're a tourist. If you're a tourist, there's no quarantine. Go anywhere you want, do what you want, feed the animals, which you're not supposed to do all of that. I will make a list of historic creators and I will put them on my community tab, I think. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go. I got 50 trillion loads of laundry to fold today, and you think I'm kidding? I'm not, unfortunately. Have a great Sunday.